Welcome to the Association 4.0 podcast, your association's no-fluff playbook to navigating and thriving in Industry 4.0 or the digital marketplace. Each week, we bring expert insights to help you and your association stay ahead of the curve.
Hello, my name is Sherry Budziak, and I'm the host of the Association 4.0 podcast, and I'm also co-founder of .org Community and founder and CEO of .org Source, a consultancy to associations. Today, my guest is Richard Yep, CAE FASAE. Richard has been part of the association profession for almost 40 years. He is a founder of Ocean Vista Advisors, a consulting firm that works exclusively with non-for-profits, specifically professional associations. Much of his consulting relates to DEI, governance, and facilitation of strategic priorities. Richard is also the vice president of Vetted Solutions, an executive recruiting firm in the DC area whose practice primarily focuses on placing senior level executives in association and not-for-profits. So welcome, Richard. Thanks for joining me today. I'm excited to have you here.
Oh, thanks, Sherry. Thanks for the invitation. I appreciate that.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know a lot of people know you, but for those of you that don't, tell us about yourself and your consultancy and what you're doing with Vetted Solutions.
Sure. Happy to do that. So I guess you'd say, Sherry, that I'm a career association management professional. As you noted, I was with the American Counseling Association for, more than 30 years. And the last 24, I was there as a CEO. And then I decided to take what I had learned, not just at ACA, but, through my interactions and volunteer work with ASAE and attending conferences like Digital Now and, things at Association Forum and learning from folks really like you. And, I wanted to see if I could advise and counsel and support other associations, especially those who are new executives to senior positions. And so I also had the good fortune of having used Vetted Solutions when I was a CEO to help me find some really excellent senior execs. So when word got out that I was going to be leaving ACA, Jim Zaniello from Vetted Solutions gave me a call and asked if I'd be interested in doing some work for his firm. And, like I said, I've always loved mentoring and advising and helping other association professionals to advance in their career. So I accepted the position with them and I've been really happy there. And I will tell you, I knew there was a lot of talent out there, right? But being exposed to so many incredible association management professionals in my work with Vetted, as well as what I do with Ocean Vista, has really given me much more hope and confidence in the future of associations. And at Ocean Vista Advisors, I've really been able to apply a lot of hopefully what I've learned through DE&I and board governance and program development to really helping groups, not just in where I was, which was the behavioral health space, but groups that are really different in scope and focus and mission. So I'm really enjoying this new chapter, and I really appreciate being here with you.
That's great. Well, you're talking about CEOs. CEOs, I feel, need to balance two goals. They got to run a business while considering kind of the social and emotional needs of their employees. How do you think those two critical areas intersect for today's executives?
I think that the difference is the way we would have answered that question 10 or 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think now it's more where, we all talk about the importance of setting clear expectations and investing in staff's professional development, things like that. But with the advent of COVID and working remote and increasing competition from outside of the traditional association community for market share, I think CEOs need to look at, I usually talk about three things: creating an open culture, designing a flexible work environment, and having to focus on not just industry challenges, but on societal issues as well.
Mm-hmm.
We used to talk about, in the old days, coming to work may have been something that people could separate from being at home. But those days, I think we know, are gone. And CEOs and other leaders in associations have to be able to understand and address work-life integration. And I use the phrase work-life integration, not work-life balance, because it is integrated now and all the issues that are brought to the table.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's interesting because I don't know that you know this, but my daughter, she graduated from college last year, and I was excited. She's got an association job, which is great. They have an amazing culture there. But this 2 days work at home, and I've had this consultancy. I've been working remotely for, 18, 19 years. But with her working remotely, it's just interesting to see it from the other perspective. And I'm like, you should be going to work 5 days a week. The office is open. Don't go just 2 days. But she's like, Mom, nobody does that. It's just the culture. It's just so different. And even for me, like, it's just different to kind of watch that environment. And even though maybe it's a generational thing, but her being 20 something, you're like, at that age, you should be going to work. You shouldn't be working from home. But as you said, we all got to like adapt and really think about, this whole work-life integration and what that looks like. And yeah, it's a different world, right?
You're getting there, Mom. I can
Yeah,
tell.
I'm getting there. I don't know if I ever will be there. That's why I'm not a CEO of an association, but that's a whole different story. Anyway, so I want to talk about that a little bit more and get your thoughts on, association professionals. They frequently say that the pandemic changed the way that we operate, right? So talk to us a little bit about what you think, were we already kind of headed in this direction as we simply started, we went there faster? Or you think that organizations are still evolving? I don't know. Give me some of your thoughts on this.
Sure.
topic.
We were headed there anyway, right? To whatever we're evolving to. I think that COVID certainly made things happen faster. It did accelerate things, but it wasn't just how to use the technology we had and apply it to working from home, where we gave everybody a laptop and everything that they needed. It was this huge lifestyle change that I think was on the horizon anyway, and maybe more adaptable for people like, your kids, my kids, whoever. But I mean, really, who would have thought that I'd see somebody sleeping in the bed behind you during a Zoom call, right? That was like, okay, this is weird. But we had to adapt to that. I think that the freedom and the flexibility, that the new way of working really was a shock to many of our systems, right? And it isn't like people hadn't thought of it before the pandemic. It was like always wanting to learn how to drive. And then someone stuck us in a Formula One race car and said, okay, go, right? All of a sudden we were like behind the wheel of this amazing fast vehicle. So I think before we can evolve, we had to experience what was going on. Then we reacted to it. And then we would figure out what worked best. And I think we're still reacting in some ways. We see that or hear that all the time. I certainly do in my consulting practice. But I think the good news is that in many cases, we really are at the, okay, let's figure this out stage. How do we take what we have and make it even more beneficial for our associations? And, for example, you look at the number of associations who were in the process of moving to or had just completed moving into like a big, beautiful headquarters building in early 2020. And now they're basically stuck with this huge building that they don't really need anymore. So some of them have figured out what to do, whether it's subleasing space or getting out of it in some way. But we are at the let's figure it out stage.
So a decade or two ago, it was rare to find an organization that I would say kind of invested in the whole employee. Rather, it was, come to work, apply your skills, serve the members, grow the industry. So talk about the attitude towards kind of employees and that culture that has changed. And, how can more experienced leaders apply what we know to who we manage now?
So it's a good news, bad news kind of thing, Sherry. I think that I'd say that, experienced leaders who may actually be having an even harder time than inexperienced leaders. And what I mean by that is that those who became CEOs at, let's say, the start or during the pandemic, they're newbies. They're way more nimble than, old curmudgeons like me who, for the first 25 or 30 years of my career, this is the way we did it. And now all of a sudden it was like, no, we can't do it that way. So the good news is, I think that older, more experienced, like gray hairs like me, we've had more time to deal with changes and crises and all sorts of things due to the amount of time we've had in the industry. We may never have faced something like a pandemic, but we do know about disruption. We do know from our experience how to address disruption. So I think that, really what's important is whether you're new or an experienced leader in the C-suite, the culture is going to trump productivity. And what I mean by that is that I talk about how culture that people can relate to and engage with and feel supported in is what will drive productivity down the road. I usually try to, when I work with whether they're new or long-term CEOs, I talk about things that they might want to focus on. And one is, like we said earlier, the whole thing around work-life integration. And another is, that focus on employee development, because it's not like the old days where you stuck with a company for like 30 years, right? I think today's workforce wants career growth opportunities. They want mentorship opportunities. They want more of a clear career path than what I know that I had. The promotion of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think that creating that culture is really important because you want employees to feel valued and respected and included. And the other thing that I try to encourage new CEOs about is encouraging feedback and collaboration. You've worked so hard, you're finally in the C-suite or you're the CEO, and you think you know it all, but really what got you here to this point is not going to get you to that next point. You are not going to be that successful if you're not willing to hear people say, I think you kind of screwed up, or I have a suggestion that, I think we need to consider. Promoting a collaborative environment is what I think today's CEOs need to do. And then, I can't talk enough about how we need to prioritize employee well-being, recognizing that importance of physical, mental, social needs that employees have. And then I think that the last one is always, leading with empathy and emotional intelligence, which more of us need. And it's something that it's a journey, even in my 33rd year when I was at ACA, I was still learning new stuff every day about how to work with people, especially people who had never worked in a traditional office environment because we hired them right out of college and right during the pandemic. They just didn't know how, what we were used to.
It's a little challenging, Richard, as I kind of look at my daughter, her friends, and that generation that never had that 9 to 5, 40 hours a week, whatever it looked like in the office. And so when you're talking about, and I'm really attuned to this, we're talking about the social and emotional aspects. I think it's hard because I could go to my CEO at that age and say, what are we doing? You could just stop by his office. That was the culture. It was great. And so you got that exposure being on Zoom. I don't know, I reflect and I'm I don't know if I would just, unless I had a set meeting, how do you just kind of stop by the office? You really don't, right? So I think we have to be very intentional and change how we're collaborating. And as you said, kind of showing empathy. Or it was funny, you talked about going into a new building. We helped an organization that was going through a major digital transformation, and they moved to a new building and all the offices were glass. It was beautiful, but I said, where's the crying room? You could where's the crying room? And now with Zoom, my next reaction was, okay, somebody can get on the call for an hour or whatever that might be. How do you know that they're having problems, whether they're personal, work related? Because now you don't even they can be fine. And then you just don't know. I don't know. So I think working through that, you have to be really intentional about. It can be struggle because I think it can be isolating for some people.
And, that's not part of what we grew up in, right? In terms of the association industry. And so I'm actually working on a piece right now where I refer to generative AI as the 21st century version of the post-pandemic water cooler. Because, everybody says, well, when we're in the office, we always had those water cooler conversations. And I have to be honest, I'm not sure where the water cooler was in my office, but everybody uses that sort of scenario. And you hear people say that and how we miss out on those conversations and those great ideas that were generated around the proverbial water cooler. And yes, I get the symbolism and what it means in terms of working in the same office with each other day after day and being able to, just poke your head in somebody else's office. But what today's group is doing, I think, is using, because they don't have that water cooler time, and it's not the same doing it on Zoom or doing an instant message, is that they are going to generative AI and they are trying to like use that as who they bounce ideas off of, which I know you have talked on your podcast a lot about generative AI, but this brings up all sorts of other really weird things that we need to be concerned about.
That's a good one, because now that you say that, like, I will talk about everything that ChatGPT spits out to me, I am not going to use, right? But it's brainstorming, right? Like, I do use it for brainstorming. I'll be interested when you have that piece out. That's a good one. I want to talk to you a little bit, especially with your expertise around DE&I. It seems that associations and other nonprofits have made a pretty strong commitment to DE&I. Well, it appears that many of the for-profits and even governments are kind of downplaying the efforts, I guess, a little bit. Should associations be leading or following, or give us some of your thoughts around that?
Sure. No, I'd be happy to do that. I think there are many areas, Sherry, where the for-profit world can teach us many important lessons regarding productivity, sales, market penetration, you name it. But I think nonprofits are unique in what they bring to the table regarding how organizations and communities are structured. And the other thing is, since our customers in associations are also the people that comprise our board of directors, there's a much more thoughtful discussion a lot of times about decision making in terms of what will make the organization more productive or more responsive or even more financially viable. So when it comes to things like the value of DE&I think it's the nonprofit world who does a better job and understands the benefits of those types of actions and endeavors. And by taking on what it means to be DE&I centric, or at least DEI supportive, I think an organization is showing its willingness to address really tough questions. I'll give you an example. Let's say an association is holding a conference in a state that has extremely restrictive abortion laws. Does that organization have a responsibility to its female attendees and staff who may need some type of medical procedure while they are on site, in which the association has to find a way to transport that attendee to where she can receive the proper treatment? These are the types of questions that nonprofits can have, because they're real life situations where societal issues are impacting their regular operations. By having those kinds of tough conversations, I think also opens us to why we need a diverse group of people to be included in the conversations that we have. So I do think nonprofits are doing a much better job right now than the for-profits in that area.
Okay, so this is the big question that I've been asking everybody on the podcast. So how do you feel the role of associations and societies changing? So do you think it's expanding, contracting, being totally reshaped? And do you think organizations will be or need to kind of be revisiting their missions, or associations taking on new kind of roles and responsibilities?
No, they're fine the way they are. No,
Yeah.
I'm just no, there is likely to be a contraction, because, while we're in the 21st century, I hate to say this, but I think a lot of associations appear to still be operating with a 20th century model. In the old days, we didn't like to refer to members as customers, right? We just always said, no, they're not customers, they're members. We're a membership organization. But what we forgot along the way is that more and more members want to be treated like customers.
Mm-hmm.
You and I know this. They want what they want, when they want it, in the format in which they want it delivered. And oh, by the way, they're good consumers and they're looking for a value. So we never want to lose that special sense of community and camaraderie that an association provides. But we also, I think, need to be realistic that it's no longer you must join your professional association if you want to be part of our industry. It's the potential member seeking the resources they need to meet whatever need they think they have. Since remote and hybrid work environments seem to have taken more precedence, we need to find out how to create those types of situations where we're relating better to what not just our association staffs are involved in, but what our members are involved in, right? Like we talked about earlier about working remote or whatever. I think where we're running into problems is sort of a fear of things that are coming down the pike. And we can't
Yes.
even say that AI is coming down the pike because it's been with us and people
Yes.
are using it. And we need to figure it out, both because it has amazing potential and it has the challenge of how do we know that what it's telling us is really based in something that is ethical and not going to be something that's discriminatory in some ways. So there's a lot of issues that are facing us as associations. And going back just for a second to AI, I hear a lot of people saying AI is going to take my job away, but I try to reframe it for them. And I say, AI is not going to take your job away, but the person who knows how to maximize the potential of AI and can use it to improve an organization may take your job away, right? So it's how you look at where we are at this point in time. And so I do think associations are changing, some faster than others. And the ones who are changing the fastest are the ones that are going to succeed and not be left out.
To follow up on something that you said, I've been talking a lot about AI is here. It's been here. We got to learn to figure this out, right? But it's also seeing, I would say, the people behind the screens, behind the data, and to your point, what your members, customers, employees really want or need, because, I've been in this space for about 30 some years, something like that. I worked at the neurosurgeons and we developed one of the first websites for associations, but it was about like, what were those members' needs? What did they really want? Why were we creating a website? And through all of these technological changes, and I do this for a living, right? We do a lot of digital transformation projects. The teams or the CEOs or whoever it might be, they're thinking about how the technology works and getting the integrations, but not how it's serving, right? So I think the same thing is with AI. Like, how do we utilize it in a way that's really serving, whether it's our people, our customers, employees, whatever it might be, and then thinking about, just to add to that, I had a podcast with David Reed, and he was talking about where AI is getting all their information. And right now, the internet, right? And the internet has a lot of advertising, right? And if you give me a picture, which I've done this, of a boardroom, and all of a sudden there's, good looking white men in the boardroom, or as a CEO, and I'll say, give me an image that's more diverse, and it might throw in a woman, and you're going back and forth, where after like an hour and a half, I'm like, okay, AI is not helping me. This is just a waste of my time. Like, I got to move on. Like, I got to just go back to my graphic designer, because the internet's filled with advertising. And so when you look at advertising, those are the things that, that are coming up. So I think it's learning, just like with anything else, when we, approach social media or online communities or those types of things, it's moving faster. So we've got to be paying attention, right?
Right. I mean, you made a really good point in that you have to understand where it's pulling its information from in order to look at something and not totally accept it as, oh yeah, that's the right answer. It's not the right answer. It's a tool to help us.
But it goes back to your point about empathy and EI and all those things. And if we can utilize tools and have those principles as our core, I think we can be successful, right?
I hope so. That's what I keep telling people.
You and I will just retire and go on a beach somewhere, right? No.
There you go.
There you go. Anyway, well, this was really fun. It was great having you on the podcast. I really appreciate your thoughts, and you're so well respected, and I'm just honored to have you on the podcast today. If anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
They can email me, richard.k.yep@gmail.
Great. Awesome. I appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
I hope so. Thanks. This was a lot of fun. Thanks, Sherry.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and discovered tips and information that will add value to your leadership style and your association. .org Source specializes in positioning teams for success with solutions for technology, strategy, and marketing. Please contact us at info@orgsource.com or visit www.orgsource.com to find out how to keep your organization on track to Association 4.0.